Hey everybody, it's Gordon Majak here, back with another late Saturday edition of the big program. It is Timeless Pop, Rock, and Soul. And as I was just listening to this song that I'm going to play for you here in a minute, as I was listening to it again today, it took me right back to 1973 when I first started hearing this song, and it was just like nothing I had ever heard before. And it occurred to me again just now, just a little while ago actually, here as I was listening to it warming up. Oh my God, I can go right back to just discovering this sound. You guys are not going to believe this song. This song is like nothing you have ever heard. No exaggeration. You'll see what I mean in a second. So let's go back to 1973, and I was 15 years old and starting my sophomore year of high school. Okay. And I was listening to the radio a lot. I was a sponge for music. And one of my favorite radio formats, which was going great guns back then, if you're an old fart like me, you remember it, FM album-oriented rock. What a great format. Just a wonderful music format, and that's how I discovered so much music back then, because that format was so open and so free, and they could play so many different kinds of material. And the AOR stations here in Seattle that I listened to certainly did that. They explored so much material, and I learned so much great music from those great radio formats of the FM side there in the early to mid 70s. And I remember in 1973, every once in a while on the radio, on the FM, never on the AM, never on the top 40, only on the FM. Every once in a while, I would catch a glimpse, a blip of this song. And I'd catch a little bit of it this time. And then the next time I'd catch a little different part of it. And at first I was noticing the drums. What is it about those drums? They're just so incredible and so hypnotic, and they just thunder, and it's like the ocean and what is with these drums? And then another time I'd catch another part of the song, and it would be the vocals, and I would go, oh my God, those vocals sound like they're from outer space or something. What is this vocalist? Who is this singer? What is the sound of these vocals? Even the background vocals were just like otherworldly. And then another time I'd hear another part of it, and I'd hear this incredible guitar and I would be like, what is this guitar? It's like from Pink Floyd or something. This guitar is just like out of this universe. I can't even put all these elements together. Well, gradually over time, these songs started getting played a little bit more often and a little bit more often, and I came to understand that it was a song from this album in 1973. This is the Fleetwood Mac Mystery to Me album from 1973. And Fleetwood Mac at this particular juncture is comprised of Mick Fleetwood on drums, John McVie on bass, there's the Fleetwood and the Mac, Christine McVie on keyboards and lead vocals. So there's Christine is together with John at that point, and she's the primary singer and primary songwriter. And there's a gentleman named Bob Weston who plays some of the most incredible and tasty slide guitar that you will ever hear in your life. That's coming up in a second. And finally, the fifth member of the band, this gentleman right here. This is the great Bob Welch on lead guitar, lead vocals, principal songwriter. Him and Christine McVie were basically doing the lion's share of the songwriting for Fleetwood Mac in 1973. And so what happened was Bob Welch wrote this song for that album. We're going to hit a song called Hypnotized. And just to give you sort of the historical context here that we're talking about with Fleetwood Mac, because everybody wants to know, well, what does this have to do with Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham? So here's how it all went down. Fleetwood Mac comprised of the people I just mentioned, including Bob Welch, put out this album in 1973. They put out another album the following year in 1974, Heroes Are Hard to Find, and then they broke up. Okay, and that is when, late 1974, so a year to a year and a half after the song that we're doing today, a year to a year and a half later is when Fleetwood Mac came apart there briefly, and that is when Mick Fleetwood was looking for replacements to put the thing back together, and that is when Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham entered the picture, late 1974, early 1975. So this is a full year to a year and a half before that. Now, as I said, this was a song that on the FM radio side caught on sort of slowly there. So it took me a while to figure out what was what, and it took me a while to hear for the song to be played often enough on the radio that I could catch it and finally figure out what it was called and who it was and etc. So when I did find that out, I was absolutely floored. Now, I knew who Fleetwood Mac was, but Fleetwood Mac back then was not a band that was going to get played on top 40 radio. They just weren't. So if it wasn't for the FM side and the FM format there, the album-oriented rock, you know, an artist like Fleetwood Mac, a group like Fleetwood Mac, and I'm talking pre-Lindsey Buckingham and pre-Stevie Nicks. This is just when it's basically Christine McVie and Bob Welch going it alone on the songwriting side. They just were not a band that was going to get that kind of airplay. It was going to have to come from the FM side. And thank God it did. This song was never a hit single or anything like that. There weren't any hit singles on this album. Now, I will say that this song was not obscured on this album or hidden or underrated in the respect that it was buried on such a great album. This song is undoubtedly the best song on the album. And this album, I would say, just to give you I would say this is the best non-Lindsey Buckingham, non-Stevie Nicks album of Fleetwood Mac, 70s, period. Okay, so this is 1973. This is a decent album, and certainly the song that we're going to hear, Hypnotized, is the best song. So it wasn't obscured on the album, but what it was because of the situation that I just explained, the type of airplay that Fleetwood Mac was and was not going to get as a group back then. It was obscured in the sense that if you didn't catch it when they played it on the FM radio, and you may not catch it for a long time, you may never have heard it. And so I look back on it now, and it's crazy that I thank God that I was listening to the radio during those times. I thank God to the DJs that played this song and kept playing it enough that I eventually caught up to it and figured out what it was and could call up and request it to be played on the radio and could go to the record store and buy the album, which I did. So thank God for those DJs that played this stuff back then, because it literally, if you weren't alive then and listening to the radio that day or the other day when they played it, you never would have heard it. You never would have heard it. And what an absolute, what a shame, because this song is just so unique and so special. I just got to play it because this song is just, I don't even want to say too much. I've said too much already. Relax and enjoy this. This is the great Bob Welch and Fleetwood Mac from 1973 and Hypnotized.
It's the same kind of story that seems to come down long ago. Two friends might be out on that lawn, which is wide at least half of the playing field. Because there's no explaining what your imagination can make you see and feel. Somebody needs nothing, you need hypnotized. Now it's not a meaningless question, ask if they've been and gone. I remember a talk about North Carolina in a strange, strange poem. You see, the sides were like glass in the thick of a forest without a road. And if any man's hand ever made that land, then I think it would have showed. And that's why it seems like they got me hypnotized.
Can you feel those background vocals and Christine McVie, and her voice blends so beautifully with Bob Welch's voice on those harmonies. Oh my God, the vocals on this song. Not to mention everything else. Listen to some of this guitar work. Oh God.
I know that's right. Seems like a dream, got me hypnotized. They say there's a place down in Mexico where a man can fly over mountains and hills. He don't need an airplane or some kind of engine, and he never will. Now you know it's a meaningless question to ask if those stories are right. 'Cause what matters most is the feeling you get when you're hypnotized. When it seems like a dream, they got you hypnotized. Body means nothing. Seems like a dream, they got you hypnotized. Yeah, that's when they got you hypnotized. It seems like a dream. It seems like a dream. Body means nothing. You float around, they got you hypnotized.
Now, I love me some Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham. You know that. But don't even talk to me about Stevie and Lindsey. This song is one of the best songs with the name Fleetwood Mac on it from any era by any incarnation of the band. What an absolute masterpiece. And this is 1973. There's so much great music in 1973. And for Fleetwood Mac, given the profile that their career was in at that time, for Bob Welch and Christine McVie and John McVie and Mick Fleetwood on those drums, and that backbeat of those drums. For them to pull this song out against all odds and all, with everything in the music business basically working against them except the freedom of that radio format and the freedom of DJs and program directors on the FM side back then to dig into albums and find songs. And that was the mission. Find the good material. Doesn't matter if it's the single, doesn't matter if it's a featured song or a popular song. Dig into these great albums and let's find the material that really shows who these artists are. And if you were one of those DJs or one of those program directors that did that back there in 1973 and then into 1974, as this song had a pretty decent shelf life there on the FM side. God, what a piece of music. Are you kidding me? And Bob Welch, you may not have recognized him or recognized his name. After he departed Fleetwood Mac there that following year in 1974, of course, he went on to become a rather successful solo artist in his own right. Had a couple big hits there in 77, 78. You may remember his signature song, an absolutely gorgeous rock ballad called Sentimental Lady. What a beautiful song. That was a song that Bob Welch had actually originally done in the confines of Fleetwood Mac, but when he left the band, he took the song with him and redid it later as a solo artist. Had a big hit with that. Bob Welch's run of solo success there in late 1977, early 1978 with his solo album French Kiss, which also happened to include contributions from one Lindsey Buckingham. So it was one big Fleetwood Mac family, even at that point, even as Lindsey and the rest of the band was doing Rumors and having all that great success. They were not above helping their brother Bob Welch out on his solo projects. So that was a pretty cool thing to see. And Bob Welch, what an underrated, to come up with a vocal like that. That vocal is just otherworldly. And he had that voice that he could do that with his voice and just give it that sound that's like from another planet. Unbelievable. And not to mention these lyrics and Mick Fleetwood on those drums. And it is truly hypnotic. And again, big shout out to those on the radio side back then on FM for even giving this song any exposure at all, because if you would have blinked, you would have missed it. And I just thank God all these years later that I didn't miss it. Hope you liked Fleetwood Mac and Bob Welch. Hypnotized. Yeah, that's pretty cool on a Saturday night, isn't it? See you soon.